A food that plays an important role in my culture is a pasty, which I'll be talking about today. I chose this food because it is something that my great-grandma made when we would visit her in Gwinn, Michigan. She would make it homemade, and it was almost like a special treat for dinner, even though it was dinner. She passed away, and this is just a food that brings my family together still. And my grandma learned how to make them just as well. It is something unique because not many people make it. It's more of a popular thing in the UP, and my grandma specifically lived in Gwinn, Michigan. The history behind this food is that this is something that wives would make for their husbands who worked in the mines, especially like in the UP. And this was a good food because it would be filling because it is full of carbs, something that you could eat warm, hot, or cold. And then it kept the men full and gave them the nutrients that they needed to keep their energy going. For each pasty, it is 517 calories. There are 70.7 grams of carbs, 22.6 grams of protein, 15.7 grams of fat total, with saturated fat being 5.2 grams, unsaturated fat being 5.5 grams, and trans fat being 0.1 gram. Cholesterol is 45.2 milligrams, fiber is 4.3 grams, sodium is 261.7 milligrams, and the total amount of sugar is 2.7 grams. Two of the highest micronutrients are B1 and B3. Is this food healthy or unhealthy? That is a great question because it's not really healthy in the fact that it's really high in saturated fats, but at the same time you are getting a lot of protein and vegetables in, but overall I'd have to say no just because of the fat. We'll be going over how to prepare this food. Some of these foods you can grow, like the potatoes, carrots, onions, but otherwise you can buy them too. It just depends. But it calls for 6 russet potatoes, 4 large carrots. You need to peel them and dice them. Then a half a medium onion diced, a half of a medium rutabaga diced, 1 pound of ground chook, and anywhere from a half a pound to 3/4 pound of round steak, and you want to cut that into the small bite-sized pieces. And then you can do a little salt and pepper. How you make the mixture, and then for the crust you're going to use 3 cups all-purpose flour, 3 heaping tablespoons of shortening, and a half a teaspoon of salt. In this case we're going to make 2 batches of that, but we do it separately, otherwise it gets too hard to make when you throw all those ingredients in for the crust. So for the mixture ingredients, you're going to take them all, just mix them in a bowl, and then for the crust you want to mix all 3 of those ingredients in your hand until they stick together. And then you add ice water a little at a time until the dough starts to form. You don't want to overmix or the dough will be really tough. Then you wrap the dough in plastic wrap and refrigerate it. This usually makes 6 pasties, so we usually make a second batch. When mixing the first ingredients, you can also add more shortening if needed so that it sticks together. But you do not want to add more flour, otherwise it will make the dough very tough. This is a demonstration of how you would put it all together. And then to consume it, you would just salt and pepper to taste, a little bit of ketchup, and use a fork.
Pasties were culturally relevant when I was growing up, as just about every household in Michigan's Upper Peninsula knew how to make pasty. And the main employment in my area was most of the men worked in the mines, mining iron ore, and a lot of them worked underground or in open pits, and they would bring pasty to work for them as it had everything in it to keep them from not getting hungry. In our house was usually made at least once a week. The recipe for pasties has not really changed much over time. It's still basically the same recipe. The only change in her recipe was adding some round steak to it. And in her crust, it was always made years and years ago with lard. Favorite time of year to make and eat pasty is more in the colder months, as it is a very heavy meal. Hope and love the fact that my kids and grandkids would love to learn how to make them someday and keep that recipe going.